Okay, what we're going to learn about now is called greatest common factor and least common multiple. Both of these are going to be crucial when working with fractions. So I'm going to start with greatest common factor. Greatest common factor, and we're going to call that GCF, is going to be used to reduce fractions. So in 6th grade, all of your answers must be in simplest form. So whenever you come up with an answer, let's say 15/45, if you get that for an answer, you must put that in simplest form. I know that this isn't in simplest form because my numerator and my denominator both end in 5, so that tells me that it can be simplified. If I want to simplify that, the easiest way to do so is to find the greatest common factor of 15 and 45. The easiest way to do that is what's called the upside down birthday cake, and you probably don't know how to do that yet, but that method is quick and easy, and it is right here on the vocab card, okay? And so I'm going to do that quick on here. I'm going to switch colors. I'm going to go green. So if I put 15 and 45 beside each other, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to draw an upside down division bar, and I'm going to ask myself what number will go into both 15 and 45. And I'm going to start with 5. So I know 5 goes into 15 3 times, and 5 goes into 45 9 times. So then I draw another upside down division bar, okay? And I ask myself, now what will go into 3 and 9? And that answer is 3. 3 will go into 3 once, 3 will go into 9 3 times. And I draw another layer. So as you see, this cake here, it looks like an upside down birthday cake, right? Layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, right? Layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. So you can kind of see that. So what we do now is we're at 1 and 3. And so we say, what number will go into 1 and 3? Well, the only number that will go into both 1 and 3 evenly is 1. And when you get that far to where 1 is the only number left, you say to yourself, 1 and done. I am 1 and done. And if I'm finding the greatest common factor, I circle this column and I multiply the numbers within the column. And that will give me my greatest common factor. So my greatest common factor of 15 and 45 is going to be equal to 5 times 3 times 1. So my greatest common factor would be 15. Okay? So since I know my greatest common factor is 15, then what I would do is take my 15/45 and I would divide both my numerator and my denominator by 15 over 15, and I would end up with 1/3. So 15 over 45 is equal to 1/3. Okay, so I just used a greatest common factor of 15 to reduce that fraction. So as you can see, greatest common factor is the largest factor that 2 or more numbers both have in common, and we are going to use that to reduce fractions. All right, so let's get rid of this, and then let's talk about least common multiple. So least common multiple is also equally important with dealing with fractions, actually probably more so. Another name for least common multiple, or actually least common multiple, turns into the least common denominator. And you must have a least common denominator when you add or subtract fractions or mixed numbers. Okay? So what we do is we find the least common multiple of 2 different denominators, and then we use that in order to rename each fraction, change them in order to have a common denominator, least common denominator. Okay, so let's do a quick example and show you how to use the upside down birthday cake to find that, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to say, for example, I want to find the least common multiple. Perhaps I want to add 3/5 and oh, let's say 7/15. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 5 and 15 in a birthday cake. Again, I'm going to ask myself what will go into 5 and 15. And I hope you say 5. 5 goes into 5 once. 5 goes into 5. 5 goes into 15 3 times. Draw another layer. I say what will go into 1 and 3. Well, that answer is 1. So I am 1 and done. Now, when I am using the birthday cake, upside down birthday cake, to find the least common multiple, I have to make an L here for least common multiple. And then I multiply, including my bottom layer here, all the numbers within that L. So I'm going to take 5 times 1 times 1 times 3. So my least common multiple is going to be equal to 15. Okay? So then I already have 7/15, so I don't need to rename that fraction. So I would just need to rename 3/15, or I'm sorry, 3/5. 3/5 equals something over 15. I ask myself, how do I get from 5 to 15? Well, I multiply by 3. Well, if I multiply my denominator by 3, I must multiply my numerator by 3, and that becomes 9/15. Okay, so then I would be able to add 9/15 and 7/15 together. Okay, so that is least common multiple. That is how we find it using the upside down birthday cake, and that is why we find it, in order to find a least common denominator and be able to add and subtract fractions. Okay, so we just talked about greatest common factor and least common multiple and what they are. So like we said, greatest common factor is going to be used to find the biggest factor. And remember, factors are two numbers that multiply together to equal another number. So for example, if you look here, I will say for 12, a factor of 12, 1 and 12 are factors. 1 times 12 equals 12. 2 and 6 are factors. 2 times 6 equals 12. 3 and 4 are factors. 3 times 4 equals 12. They're all factors of 12. Okay? So greatest common factor, you're looking for the biggest number, biggest factor that two numbers have in common, two whole numbers have in common. And we use the greatest common factor to reduce fractions. Okay? Now, if you look at this anchor chart, you can see that this is another method of finding the greatest common factor, is to list the factors for both numbers. And this is pretty easy. One way we kind of do that is what we call the factor rainbow. And so they have 12 and 24 here as an example. So I'm going to kind of show you that as a factor rainbow. So if I have 12, so I'm going to write it like this, and I'm going to say my factors for 12 are 1 and 12. So 1 goes with 12. Then I would say 2 and 6. Then I would say 3 and 4. Do you see where the rainbow comes in there? So each factor is paired with its partner that multiplies with it to get the whole number that you're looking for the factors for. Okay, and then 24 would look the same. You would have 24, then you would say 1 here, and you write 24 on the other side, connect them with a little rainbow. 2, and then that goes with 12. 3 goes with 8. 4 goes with 6. Okay, so you don't miss any that way. The reason why most people prefer the upside down birthday cake to the factor, listing the factors or the factor rainbow, 1, the birthday cake is faster. 2, and you can find least common multiple at the same time. 2, the second thing is, if you don't know your multiplication facts, it's very difficult to list the factors or the multiples in order to find the greatest common factor and least common multiple. So that is the downside of listing the factors and the multiples. I don't care what way you do it, what way you find greatest common factor or least common multiple, as long as you show your work so I can see how you did it. Okay, so that's all that we really care about as your teachers, is that we can tell how you got your answers. Okay, so let's look at least common multiple now. So we just talked about least common multiple leads us to least common denominator, which we need to add and subtract fractions. So here you see that least common multiple, what they did is they took 9 and 12, they listed the multiples for each number, and then they found the smallest one they have in common, okay? Now, you can totally do it that way. It's totally fine. So you go 9, 18, 27, 36. Again, you have to know your multiplication facts in order to be able to do that. And then 12, 24, 36, and then 36 was the smallest they have in common. And then you would rename your fractions in order that 36 is the denominator there. Okay? So if we, for example, had, let's say 8 and 14, we wanted that. So then we'd have to know our multiples are going to be 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. I'm going to stop there. And then I'm going to go 40, 14, 14, 28. Oh, see, now it gets a little trickier, right? Because 14 is not a normal multiplication fact. So then I have to think, okay, 24 plus 14 is what? Okay, 28 plus 10 would be 38, and then I need 4 more. Okay, there's 42. Okay, now I need 14 more than that, so then that's going to be, what, 56. Okay, so I need to go further on my 8 now, so I'm going to go 48, right? And then, 56. Okay, now there it is, 56. Where if I put 8 and 14 in a cake, I can say, 2 works. Okay, I'm one and done now. Make my L. Okay, so I need least common multiple is going to be 2 times 1 times 4 times 7. Okay, and that is going to be 2, 8, 56. That was a lot faster. Okay, so whatever you're comfortable with, totally fine either way. Okay, 2 other methods of finding greatest common factor. We have another like T-ladder method that you can use. And all you're doing here is listing the factors in a T-chart. So like 1 times 14 is 14, 2 times 7 is 14. And then 1 times 35 is 35, and 5 times 7 is 35. So then you look and you say, okay, what is the biggest one they have in common? Oh, it's 7. And that's the same as if you would list the factors. Okay? And then you also have factor trees. So what you're doing here is looking at it, 2 numbers that multiply together to get 20. So 4 times 5 is 20. And you're breaking them down as small as they can go into prime numbers. So 5 is prime, right? So it can't be broken down any further. And then 4 can be broken down into 2 and 2. And then you're looking at a prime number times something to give you 28. 7 is prime, 4 isn't. So then 4 can be broken down to 2 and 2. So then you want to look at 2 times 2 is 4, and this 2 times 2 is 4. And then you can see that you need to see what's in common to line up your prime factorization. 2 times 2 is 5, or 2 times 2 times 5, 2 times 2 times 7. What do they have in common? 2 times 2, 2 times 2, which is 4. Greatest common factor is 4. Okay? So there's a factor tree too. And we're going to get more into these factor trees later on when we start algebra and prime factorization. So if you don't really like the factor tree right now, that's okay. You don't have to use it. You're going to get more practice with that as we move through 6th grade math later on in the year. Okay, so now we're just going to do a couple examples using the 2 most popular methods so you can kind of get more comfortable with it and then pick whatever one you want to use. So we're going to go with greatest common factor and least common multiple of these sets of numbers. So I'm going to start with 8 and 20, okay? And I'm going to list the factors and the multiples. So I'm going to start with the greatest common factor, and I'm going to start with 8. So my factors for 8 are going to be 1, 8, 2, and 4, okay? And then for 20, my factors are going to be 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5, okay? So then I need to look at these and see which one is the biggest they have in common, and that is 4. So my greatest common factor is going to be equal to 4 of 8 and 20. Okay. Okay, so now that we found the greatest common factor, listing the factors, let's do it in the cake. Okay. Oh, no, let's do the multiples. Let's find the least common multiple, and then we'll do the cake. That sounds like a better plan. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so let's go multiples of 8. So we're talking least common multiple now. So 8 is going to be 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48. Okay. And then let's go 20. 20 is going to be 20, 40, 60, 80. Okay. And then if I look, the smallest one they both have in common is 40. So my least common multiple is 40. Okay. Now I'm going to throw them in a cake. Okay. So let's go 8, 20. What goes into both? 2. 2 goes into 8 4 times. 2 goes into 20 10 times. Okay, what can I use again? Oh, let's go with 2 again. 2 goes into 4 twice. 2 goes into 10 5 times. I'm 1 and done. Okay, my greatest common factor is going to be 2 times 1, which is equal to 4, which is what we got the first time. My least common multiple is my L. And my least common multiple is going to be equal to 2 times 1 times 2 times 5. 2 times 2 is 4, times 1 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 5 is 40, which is what we just got. So that was the cake. So in my opinion, the cake is my favorite way of doing it. Downfall of the cake, you cannot do 3 numbers. So the best situation for that, let me go ahead and show you one with 3 numbers. You can try 24 and 36 on your own and 3 and 12 on your own with whatever method you want. On the Google Slides, I have answers there using both methods that you can check your work with, okay? Okay, so if you have 3 numbers, so let's say we have 8, 14, and I don't know, 32, I guess, okay? The best thing to do when you have this, and you don't want to list all the multiples for each one, is to take your 2 biggest numbers, 24 and 32, and put them in a cake, okay? So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with 14 and 32, okay? And I'm going to say what will go into both, 2, okay? And now I'm 1 and done. So then I'm going to say 2 times 1, whoopsies, 2 times 1 times 7 times 16. So my least common multiple is going to be 2 times 1 times 7 times 16. 2 times 1 is 2, times 7 is 14, times 16. So I need 14 times 16. So it's 224, okay? So then the best thing to do now is to see if 8 will go into 224. And it does. So I now know that this 224 will work with 8 as well. And now I can use the birthday cake for that and know that it will work, and I could change 224s. I hope that makes sense. That's kind of a bonus. Okay, bonus. Sorry, I don't have a super teacher handwriting. So there's greatest common factor, least common multiple. You probably get from this video that I prefer upside down birthday cake, but I am by no means pushing that method on you. If you prefer to list factors or multiples or do factor trees or ladders or whatever method you want, totally up to you. As long as you show your work and I can follow it, it's totally great. So thanks, guys.